It wasn't the first time she had said something hurtful, but it was definitely the last time I ever underestimated her. When Camille told me to find someone else, the words didn't hit me all at once. At first, they felt like a hollow insult, just a moment of anger, an outburst that would pass. But they lingered, settling into my chest like a poison I couldn't shake. I didn't want to believe it. She was the woman I had built everything with, the woman I had imagined a future with. But that night, as the heat of our argument cooled into a cold silence, the finality of her words hung in the air. It was a quiet surrender, not a scream, not a plea, but a whisper of something far more dangerous: indifference. Find someone else. I wanted to argue, to fight back, to make her see that I was still here, still committed to us. But the moment I opened my mouth, I realized I wasn't talking to the woman I knew anymore. This was someone else, someone I didn't recognize. Camille had checked out long before the words left her lips. The woman I married wasn't there anymore. It wasn't just the breakup that shook me, though. It was the way she said it, with no emotion, no hesitation, like she had been planning it for a while. I'll admit, I was angry, but I didn't know what to do with that anger. So, I did what seemed like the right thing. I left. I didn't pack my bags or make a grand exit. I just slipped away, quietly. I moved into a small apartment a few blocks away, where nothing felt real anymore. My life was a blur of work and the occasional social gathering. I stayed busy, distracted, anything to avoid thinking about the fact that the woman I had loved for so long had cast me aside like some forgotten object. But even then, she wasn't gone. She wasn't gone, because Camille wasn't the type to leave things behind. If she was done, she would have made sure it stayed done. But no, she still watched me. Every move, every choice I made, she was there, lurking in the corners of my life. It started innocently enough, a text here, a call there. I thought she was just checking in, maybe making sure I wasn't falling apart. But then it got strange. Her messages started to feel invasive. She knew where I'd been, who I was with, what I had eaten for lunch. She was no longer asking about me. She was tracking me. At first, I thought it was a coincidence, maybe a misunderstanding. But when she showed up at the coffee shop where I had lunch the other day, I knew something was wrong. She didn't approach me. She just stood there, watching from across the room, her gaze locked on mine like she was trying to see right through me. She didn't say a word. She didn't need to. The silence between us screamed louder than anything she could have said. I thought about confronting her, demanding to know what was going on, but I didn't. I couldn't. Because in the back of my mind, I knew that there was more to her behavior than just jealousy or regret. This wasn't about wanting me back. This was something darker, something deeper, something I wasn't ready to face. The messages kept coming, more frequent, more specific. It was as if she could sense every change in my routine, every new path I tried to take. She wasn't just lurking in the shadows. She was a part of my life, like a shadow that refused to fade away. But what terrified me most was the day I found something that didn't belong to me. It was a small, innocuous thing, really. A bookmark in a book I didn't remember buying. I turned the page, flipping through the chapters until I saw it. Camille's handwriting on the back of the bookmark. It wasn't just a message, though. It was a detailed list of things I had done in the past few days, places I had been, people I had talked to, moments that no one else could have known. How did she know all of this? How did she know what I had done when I hadn't told a single soul? The shock of it hit me like a slap in the face. Camille wasn't just spying on me. She was orchestrating my every move, pulling the strings like I was nothing more than a marionette. I couldn't escape her. She was everywhere. In my thoughts, in my actions. And somehow, I knew it was only the beginning. Days turned into weeks, but the weight of her words didn't lighten. If anything, it felt heavier with every passing day. Camille's voice, cold, detached, like an echo of someone I used to know, haunted me. Find someone else. The phrase looped in my mind like a broken record. I was trying to move on, trying to build a new life, but the strange thing was, Camille wasn't really gone. Not in any way that made sense. I started noticing the little things. It wasn't just the texts anymore. It was the way things began disappearing, only to mysteriously reappear in places I didn't remember putting them. My car keys, a favorite jacket, things I would have sworn I left in one place were suddenly in another. But I dismissed it at first. Maybe I was just being paranoid. After all, I had recently gone through a huge upheaval in my life. I was still adjusting to the idea of being alone. One evening, as I sat in my small apartment, too quiet, too empty, trying to finish some work, I heard it, a soft knock at my door. I froze. I wasn't expecting anyone. I wasn't even sure I wanted anyone to show up. But the knocking didn't stop. Whoever it was, they weren't going to leave until I answered. Reluctantly, I stood up, walked to the door, and opened it. The last person I expected to see stood in front of me. It was Camille. She didn't smile. She didn't even look surprised to see me. Her eyes were steady, almost too steady, and her expression was unreadable. "I need to talk to you," she said, her voice calm, collected. No pleading, no apology, just that same strange detachment that had started everything. I didn't know what to say. My instinct was to close the door and walk away, but something about the way she stood there, like she belonged, made me hesitate. About what? I finally managed to ask. Camille stepped forward slightly, but not too much. She wasn't crossing any boundaries, yet. She wasn't here to argue, or at least that's not what it felt like. "About us," she said, her eyes narrowing just enough to signal there was something more beneath the surface. "About the fact that you think you can just erase everything." My chest tightened. "I didn't. You don't have to explain." She cut me off smoothly. "You never really understood, did you?" I shook my head, confused. Understood what? That I never really left. Her voice was almost too calm. It sent a shiver down my spine. "Not physically, not emotionally. I can't just vanish. And neither can you." Her words hit me like a cold gust of wind. I couldn't breathe. What was she talking about? I tried to speak, but my mouth went dry. "Camille, this isn't." "Don't make this harder than it has to be," she interrupted again, her voice soft but firm, like a gentle warning. "You're still in my life. You've always been. And you'll never really escape me. No matter what you do. No matter who you're with." I stepped back, my heart hammering in my chest. I didn't want to believe what she was implying. "What do you want from me?" I demanded, my voice unsteady. She smiled, but it wasn't a real smile. It was something colder, almost calculating. "I want you to see, to understand that we're tied together, more than you'll ever know." She paused for a beat, and then added, "You're not going anywhere, Andrew. And neither am I." Her words lingered in the air long after she left. I stood there in stunned silence, trying to process what had just happened. The woman I thought I knew had become a stranger, someone I didn't recognize, someone who had somehow found a way to worm her way back into my life, despite everything. The following days felt like a waking nightmare. I kept expecting her to show up again. I couldn't shake the feeling that she was always watching, always lurking just beyond the edge of my vision. But it wasn't just about her being physically close. It was something deeper, something unsettling. It felt like Camille had slipped into the very fabric of my reality, like a shadow I couldn't outrun. It wasn't long before I realized that Camille wasn't just stalking me. She was controlling me, pulling the strings from some invisible corner of my life. She had always known me, known my weaknesses, my fears. But now it seemed like she was using that knowledge against me, like she was setting up some grand game that I wasn't even aware I was a part of. And no matter how much I tried to push her away, no matter how many walls I built between us, she was always there, like a ghost I couldn't exorcise. The worst part? I couldn't shake the feeling that this was just the beginning. What was she planning? What did she want from me now? The days dragged on in a strange kind of haze. I tried to move forward, tried to focus on the life I was supposedly building without Camille. But it wasn't working. Every time I thought I could breathe, every time I felt like I was taking a step toward freedom, something would remind me of her. It was like she had become an invisible tether that I couldn't cut. I should have expected it, I suppose. After everything that had happened, I should have known that Camille wasn't someone who could just walk away. But I couldn't have predicted the lengths to which she would go to keep me in her orbit. She wasn't just watching me anymore. She was manipulating everything around me, slowly erasing my sense of autonomy. It felt like I was trapped in a web, each thread slowly tightening with every move I made. The first real sign that things were spiraling out of control came one evening when I got home from work. I had barely stepped through the door when I felt it, an unnatural stillness in the air. My apartment, which usually felt so empty, suddenly felt like it was filled with a presence I couldn't place. I shook it off, thinking it was just the anxiety that had been building up in the back of my mind. But then I noticed something that sent a chill down my spine. My front door was slightly ajar, not wide open, just enough for me to notice that it had been tampered with. I wasn't sure if I had left it like that. I always double-checked the locks. Yet there it was. A crack of darkness behind the door. I stepped inside cautiously, my heart racing in my chest. The apartment was quiet, eerily so. Nothing seemed out of place, yet everything felt off. I checked the living room, the kitchen, the bathroom. No sign of anyone. But as I passed by my bedroom, I stopped dead in my tracks. My bed wasn't made the way I had left it. The sheets were messy, the pillows out of place. It wasn't just that they had shifted, it looked like someone had been lying there. The thought that someone had broken into my apartment crossed my mind, but I quickly dismissed it. There were no signs of forced entry, no broken windows or doors. Whoever had been in my apartment had keys. Only one person had access to that kind of key. Camille. I felt a wave of nausea rise up in my throat. How could she have done this? Why would she invade my space like this? The confusion gave way to anger, but underneath that, there was a deeper fear. Camille wasn't just lingering on the periphery of my life anymore. She was taking control, making herself a part of everything. I wasn't the one in charge anymore. I spent the next hour frantically checking everything. My phone, my laptop, my personal belongings. I had to find something, anything, that could explain this. That's when I saw it. A single note, tucked into the corner of my desk drawer. It was small, folded neatly, and when I opened it, I felt the blood drain from my face. The note read, "You think you can get away? You think you can move on? I'm always here, Andrew. Always." There was no signature, no further explanation. Just those words. But they were more than enough. Camille had been here. She had watched me. She had invaded my life in ways I couldn't even begin to understand. I felt a sense of helplessness flood over me. What was I supposed to do? How could I escape someone who knew me so well, who understood my every fear and weakness, and was using that knowledge to haunt me at every turn? I wasn't just dealing with a jealous ex-wife. I was dealing with someone who had crossed a line that I couldn't even begin to comprehend. That night, sleep didn't come easy. Every noise outside my window, every creak of the floorboards, made me jump. I kept expecting Camille to appear, to walk into my room, to tell me how foolish I was for thinking I could get away from her. But she never came. Instead, the silence in the apartment was deafening, and I found myself wondering what her next move would be. It wasn't until the next morning that I realized just how deep Camille's reach had gone. I woke up to find that every single one of my social media accounts had been accessed. Every post I had made in the past few weeks, every photo I had shared, had been liked and commented on by her. But it wasn't just that. She had been reading everything. Every message, every comment, every text. I had never given Camille the password to any of my accounts. She had no right to be looking at my life this way. But there it was, clear as day, her name in the activity logs, like a constant presence, a shadow lingering over my every online interaction. And that's when it hit me. Camille wasn't just a ghost from my past anymore. She had become an active part of my present. She was everywhere, in every corner of my life, watching me, controlling me, making me feel like I was suffocating in her web. I couldn't escape her. Not physically, not mentally. And now, I wasn't even sure how I could escape her online presence. I couldn't ignore the gnawing feeling that something far worse was coming. The walls were closing in. Camille had always been good at reading me, but now, it felt like she knew my every move before I even made it. Every time I checked my phone or opened my laptop, it felt like I wasn't in control anymore. It was as if Camille had learned how to manipulate the very fabric of my daily life. Every thought I had, every desire to escape her grip, was countered by her knowing exactly what to do. It was like I was stuck in a chess match with a master player, always 2 or 3 steps behind, never quite understanding how she was pulling the strings. What made it worse was that I had no idea how far this had gone. Had she been in my life for longer than I realized? Was she always watching, always pulling the invisible threads that kept me close to her? There were nights when I'd lie awake, my mind racing with questions. Was everything I thought I knew about her a lie? It was during one of those sleepless nights that I made a decision. I was done being her puppet. I had to take control back. I wasn't going to let her define me, shape my life, or manipulate me into staying in a situation I couldn't escape. I had to find a way to confront her, to tell her face to face that I was done. But even that idea felt dangerous. Every time I thought about confronting Camille, I remembered that cold, calculating look in her eyes, the way she seemed to have anticipated my every move before I even made it. Was I ready for this? Could I even handle the truth of what she was really doing? The next morning, I decided I had to get out of my apartment. I was suffocating there, trapped in a cycle of fear and paranoia. I needed a change of scenery, a chance to clear my head. I booked a last-minute flight to a small town outside the city, hoping that the isolation would give me some clarity. I needed space, and I needed to get away from everything that was making me feel like I was losing my grip on reality. I remember arriving at the small, quiet airport, feeling the weight of my decisions settle over me. This was my escape, my chance to breathe again. But as soon as I stepped out of the terminal and into the fresh air, I felt it again, the unmistakable sensation that I wasn't alone. My skin prickled, and I glanced over my shoulder, half expecting to see Camille standing there, watching me, just as she had before. But no one was there. Still, the feeling wouldn't leave. It was as if she had followed me here, even to this remote place. I pushed the thought aside, telling myself that I was being paranoid. I checked into a small hotel, settled into my room, and tried to relax. I was alone for the first time in a long time. I could breathe. I could think. And for the first time since Camille had dropped that bombshell on me, I actually allowed myself to entertain the thought of what it might feel like to live without her, truly live without her. But as I was unpacking my things, I felt a strange compulsion to check my phone. I had a single unread message, and when I saw who it was from, my stomach dropped. It was from an unknown number, and the message read, "Did you really think I would let you go that easily?" The message was simple, but the weight of it hit me hard. There was no signature, no hint of who sent it. But deep down I knew. It was Camille. I sat on the bed, staring at the message for what felt like hours. My thoughts raced. How did she know where I was? How did she find me? I had made sure to keep my plans to myself. I hadn't told anyone where I was going. I hadn't posted anything on social media, had avoided checking in anywhere. Yet, there she was, tracking me down, even in the middle of nowhere. That's when I realized, Camille wasn't just watching me. She was controlling my every move, controlling my reality in ways I didn't even fully understand. She had learned how to manipulate every part of my life, even the parts one thought I could keep to myself. I wasn't safe. There was no escaping her. No matter how far I ran, no matter how much I tried to break free, she would always find me. And it wasn't just about wanting me back anymore. This was about power, about control, about making sure I never felt free again. I felt a wave of panic rise in my chest. My hands trembled as I typed a response to her, my fingers struggling to keep up with my thoughts. "How are you doing this?" I wrote, hoping to provoke a response. Maybe if I knew how she was tracking me, I could find a way to stop it. A few minutes passed, and then, finally, another message arrived. This time, the words sent a chill through my body. "I'm everywhere, Andrew. You just don't see me. But I'm watching. Always." I closed my eyes, feeling the weight of her presence like a heavy cloak around me. There was no escape from this. There was no escaping Camille. She was already in my life, wrapped around every part of it, every thought I had, every move I made. And I wasn't sure how much longer I could keep pretending that I was in control. The message from Camille lingered in my mind like a shadow I couldn't escape. "I'm everywhere, Andrew. You just don't see me. But I'm watching. Always." The chilling simplicity of her words felt like a hammer striking the last fragile remnants of my reality. I had thought I could escape, thought I could finally take control of my own life again. But now I saw it. Camille wasn't just in my past. She was a part of my present, inescapable, suffocating, and relentless. Every time I thought I was moving forward, she was there, pulling the strings, pushing me back into the corner she'd so carefully crafted for me. I sat on the bed, staring at my phone, the screen glowing in the dim light of the hotel room. How was she doing this? How did she always know where I was? I had made sure to leave no trace, to keep my location private, but somehow, she had found me. Every step I took, every move I made, she was tracking it. The feeling of being watched, of being under constant surveillance, was unbearable. My mind raced, trying to process everything that was happening. Was I really losing my mind, or was this real? Was Camille some kind of master manipulator who had learned to control every aspect of my life? Or was there something even darker at play here? I needed answers. But how could I find them when it felt like I was always one step behind? Always playing catch-up in a game I didn't even know the rules to. That's when a sudden, unsettling thought crossed my mind. What if Camille wasn't just tracking me physically? What if she had access to everything? My messages, my emails, my calls, my private conversations. What if she knew things about me that I didn't even know about myself? I tried to focus, to think clearly. The first thing I needed to do was protect myself. I immediately started going through every device I had, changing passwords, disabling locations, making sure I wasn't leaving a trail. I checked my email accounts, my phone's tracking history, anything that could lead back to me. But then I stopped. I froze. Something wasn't right. My heart began to race as I realized that every device I checked, every setting I adjusted, every password I changed, felt pointless. It was like trying to plug a leaky dam with tissue paper. Camille was already too far into my life. She had already infiltrated every part of it. My hands trembled as I scrolled through my phone's security settings, then checked my email. It was then that I noticed it, an odd notification buried deep in my inbox, one I hadn't noticed before. It was an email from an unknown source. No subject line, just a single attachment. My stomach churned. I hesitated, my fingers hovering over the screen. Should I open it? Part of me screamed to delete it and pretend it didn't exist, but my curiosity won out. I tapped the screen, opening the email, and immediately regretted it. The attachment was a video. It was grainy at first, but as it loaded, I could make out the unmistakable figure of Camille. She was standing outside of my apartment. My stomach twisted as I recognized the street in the background. The video was time-stamped just a few hours earlier. She was watching me. She was watching my every move, even when I thought I was safe. And there she was, standing in the shadows, waiting for me to make the next move. I felt the blood drain from my face. How had she gotten this footage? How had she been there, right outside my door, at that exact moment? The realization hit me like a ton of bricks. Camille wasn't just tracking me from afar. She was closer than I thought. She was involved in every part of my life, every second of my day. I closed my eyes, trying to steady my breath, but the weight of the situation was too much. She wasn't just a shadow anymore. She was my reality. There was no escaping her, no getting away. I was trapped, and she knew it. She had me right where she wanted me. Every move I made, she anticipated. Every thought I had, she knew before I could even form it. I knew then that I had to face her. I couldn't run anymore. I couldn't hide. But as much as I wanted to confront her, to demand answers, I knew it wouldn't be that simple. Camille wasn't someone who would just show up at my door and explain herself. She was playing a game, and I was her pawn. But how much longer would I be able to play along? How much longer could I endure the manipulation, the mind games, before I lost everything? That night, I decided to take the first step toward confronting her. I left the hotel room, hoping that just a change of location, a fresh perspective, might give me the clarity I needed. But as I walked through the quiet streets, the sound of my footsteps echoing off the empty pavement, I couldn't shake the feeling that I wasn't alone. That Camille was watching me even now, waiting for me to make my next move. I stopped in my tracks, my eyes scanning the darkened corners of the street. The feeling of being watched was overwhelming. My heart pounded in my chest as I turned, half expecting Camille to step out of the shadows and confront me. But there was no one, just the silence of the night. I wasn't sure whether I was relieved or disappointed. The fear of facing her was overwhelming, but I knew I had to do it. I had to stop being a passive participant in my own life. But the question was, what would happen when I finally confronted Camille? Would I gain the upper hand, or would I be swallowed whole by the same web she had woven around me? It wasn't until I sat down in that dingy little diner, the flickering neon sign casting eerie shadows across the tables, that I finally accepted what I had to do. I couldn't run anymore. I had spent days trying to outrun the inevitable. But the truth was that Camille wasn't some fleeting nightmare that I could escape in the morning. She was real, tangible, and no matter where I went, she always seemed to be one step ahead. The weight of that knowledge was suffocating. She wasn't just controlling my physical surroundings. She had found a way to get inside my head, turning every corner of my life into something unrecognizable. I stirred my coffee absent-mindedly, the dark liquid swirling in my cup, not even tasting it. The world around me seemed muffled, as if I were underwater, and everything felt distant, except for the gnawing feeling that Camille was just waiting for me to make a mistake, waiting for me to slip up, to fall into her trap. That's when I saw it. The email. The one I had almost ignored earlier that day. It had been sitting in my inbox, taunting me with its subject line. "You still think you can get away?" That single message was like a dare. It felt like Camille had written it just for me, knowing I'd open it, knowing I'd be compelled to confront whatever horrors she had hidden inside. I unlocked my phone again, my hand shaking as I tapped the screen. I shouldn't have opened it. I knew I shouldn't. But curiosity was a drug, and I was addicted. When the attachment loaded, it wasn't just a photo or another cryptic message. It was a video, a live stream. At first, I couldn't make sense of it. The footage was blurry, too grainy to be clear. But as it focused, I recognized the familiar scene, the lobby of my apartment building. The camera angle shifted, and I saw a figure standing in the shadows. Someone was waiting. They were waiting for me, watching me, studying my every move. The footage was time-stamped just minutes ago. My blood ran cold. It couldn't be real. How was she doing this? How had she placed cameras in my building, in my life, in places I thought I was safe? The answer was simple, and yet horrifying. Camille had always been one step ahead. She had anticipated every move, every hesitation, and somehow, she had managed to build an entire surveillance network around me. A network I didn't even know existed. The worst part wasn't even that Camille had access to my world. It wasn't even the fact that she was watching me, lurking in every corner of my life. No, it was the feeling that I was losing my mind, that she was breaking me down piece by piece until I couldn't tell what was real anymore. I didn't even recognize my own life. Every place I thought was mine had been tainted. Every space I thought was safe had been invaded by her presence. I needed to confront her, to find out exactly how deep her control went. I wasn't sure I had the strength to face the truth, but I couldn't go on like this. I couldn't keep living in this nightmare where she held all the power, where every choice I made seemed to be dictated by her. That night, I called her. The first time in weeks. The phone rang for what felt like an eternity, and then, finally, I heard her voice on the other end. It was the same as it had always been. Cold, steady, almost soothing, but there was something underneath. Something sharp, something calculated. "Andrew," she said, almost as if she had been waiting for the call. "You've finally decided to face reality." Her words sent a shiver down my spine. "What do you want from me, Camille? Why are you doing this? Why can't you just let me go?" There was a brief silence on the other end of the line, and then, almost with a smile in her voice, she replied, "You think I'm the one who's holding on to this? Andrew, I'm not the one who can't let go. You're the one who keeps reaching out. You're the one who can't escape me." Her words were like a slap in the face. She was right. I had tried to run. I had tried to fight back. But no matter how much I fought, no matter how far I went, I always ended up back at the same place, tangled in her web. "I'm not going to be your prisoner anymore," I said, more to myself than to her. My voice was shaky, but there was something inside me that finally snapped. I wasn't going to let her control me. Not anymore. Camille chuckled softly. "Prisoner? You're not a prisoner, Andrew. You've never been one. You just don't understand the game we're playing. You never did." The line went dead, and I sat there in the silence of the diner, the phone still pressed to my ear, my heart pounding in my chest. What had just happened? Had I lost the last bit of control I had left? Was I really playing a game with Camille, one I had no hope of winning? I slammed my phone down on the table, my fingers curling into fists. I had to get out of here. I couldn't stay in this town, in this life, anymore. The only thing I could do was leave, disappear for good. But then, as I stood up and grabbed my coat, I froze. There, on the other side of the diner window, I saw her. Camille. She was standing in the shadows, her eyes locked on mine, a faint smile playing at the corners of her lips. She had been watching me the entire time. My heart stopped as I saw Camille standing there in the shadows outside the diner. She wasn't just an apparition anymore. She was a presence, a constant in my life. I didn't know how she had found me, but in that moment, it didn't matter. The fact that she was there, watching me, was enough to send a cold shiver down my spine. I stepped back, the weight of everything I had tried to ignore crashing down on me. The room felt too small, the walls too close. I couldn't breathe. Camille had always been unpredictable, but now it was clear. She was no longer just an ex-wife I was trying to escape. She was a force, methodical, calculating, and terrifying in her pursuit of control. My mind raced as I tried to figure out what to do. Should I go after her? Confront her right there, in the street, under the cold, dim light of the diner's sign? Should I run? Should I call for help? But what was I even running from? She was everywhere. There was no hiding from her anymore. She had found me in the most secluded place I could think of, and now I felt completely exposed. I slid into the booth, trying to steady my breathing. My hands were shaking. I couldn't keep this up, living in fear, constantly looking over my shoulder. This was it. This was my breaking point. I needed answers, but I also needed to understand something more fundamental. How had she gotten so far inside my life? How had she managed to destroy my sense of self, piece by piece, without me even realizing it? I looked at my phone again, my mind fixating on the image of Camille standing outside. I didn't know how much time had passed since she had been watching me, but I wasn't ready to go out there and confront her just yet. I needed to think. I needed to make sure I wasn't walking into a trap. Then my phone buzzed. Another message from her. My hands were clammy as I unlocked it. You should come outside, Andrew. You've seen me. Now it's your turn to face what you've been avoiding. I stared at the message, my chest tightening. This wasn't just a request. This was a command. A challenge. Camille wasn't just stalking me anymore. She was leading me, pulling me like a marionette, and I couldn't stop myself from following. Every instinct in my body screamed to ignore her, to run and never look back. But there was a part of me that felt a twisted need to confront her, to face the woman who had orchestrated every aspect of my life without my knowledge, to ask the questions I had been too afraid to ask. I stood up, throwing a few bills on the table to pay for the coffee. My hands still shook, but my mind was made up. I had to go out there. I had to see her. I stepped outside into the cold night, the damp air clinging to my skin. Camille was standing in the same spot where I had seen her moments earlier, her silhouette just visible in the dim light from the diner's sign. But there was something different in her posture now. She wasn't just watching me anymore. She was waiting for me to make the next move. You're here, she said, her voice eerily calm, too calm. I was wondering how long it would take for you to show up. I took a hesitant step forward. What do you want, Camille? The words came out quieter than I expected. Part of me wanted to scream, but the other part, the part that knew how deep into my head she had crawled, remained paralyzed with fear. Her smile was almost affectionate, as though she were speaking to an old friend. I want you to understand something, Andrew. You've never been in control of your own life. I've always been here, just waiting for you to realize that. She took a slow step toward me, her eyes never leaving mine. You thought you could get away. You thought you could erase me from your life, but you can't. Not ever. I tried to ignore the pit of dread forming in my stomach. Why are you doing this? Why did you push me to leave if you were just going to keep following me? She shook her head, as though the question itself was beneath her. It's not about pushing you away, Andrew. It's about understanding who you really are. You think you're free, but you're not. I've always known you better than you know yourself. You've always been weak, looking for someone to save you. I'm just the one who's been here, helping you see the truth. My heart was pounding now. What truth? I spat out, my voice rising despite myself. That I'm a prisoner of your obsession? That I've been living in your shadow this entire time? Her gaze hardened, the smile slipping away. Don't mistake my actions for obsession, Andrew. This is something far deeper. This is fate. You can't escape it. I'm the one who's always been right for you. I took a step back, feeling the ground beneath me shift. You're crazy. She didn't flinch. Maybe, but I'm your truth. And deep down, you know it. You've always known. I could feel the weight of her words sinking in, twisting through my thoughts. She was right, in a way I couldn't fully explain. Camille had never been just a woman I had loved. She was the air I breathed, the shadow that followed me, the person who knew me better than I knew myself. And as terrifying as it was, there was a small part of me that couldn't deny the strange sense of comfort in that realization. I wanted to scream. I wanted to fight back. But all I could do was stand there, trapped in her gaze, waiting for her to make the next move. For a long moment, I stood there, paralyzed by Camille's words, by the suffocating grip she had on my mind, my soul. The air around us seemed to freeze, her presence so intense it felt like it was closing in on me from all sides. I couldn't breathe. I couldn't think. I was standing face to face with the woman who had been my everything, and yet had also been my worst nightmare. But something inside me snapped. It wasn't anger. It wasn't defiance. It was clarity. Camille had spent so long shaping my reality, pulling strings, making me question my every move. But at that moment, I realized something vital. I was still me. I still had control over my life. I still had a choice. I wasn't her puppet, and I didn't have to be. I took a deep breath and looked into her eyes, trying to steady myself. "You're right about one thing," I said, my voice finally steady. "You've always been a part of my life. But that ends tonight." Camille's expression shifted, a flicker of uncertainty in her eyes. It was a brief moment, but it was enough for me to see that even she, in her calculated obsession, had underestimated one thing: my ability to break free. "I'm done," I said, taking another step back, feeling my heart beat stronger with each word. "Done being your pawn. Done being controlled by fear. I'm not afraid of you anymore, Camille." Her face hardened, but I didn't flinch. Something inside me had clicked, a switch that had been stuck in the off position for so long, and now it was on. I was done being manipulated. I was done playing her game. Camille opened her mouth, but I raised my hand to stop her. "No, you don't get to say anything. I've let you have too much control over me for too long. This ends now." The silence stretched between us, and for the first time, I saw something in Camille's eyes that I hadn't seen before: regret. It was brief, fleeting, but it was there. Maybe it was because, for once, she was no longer the one in charge. Maybe it was because she realized she had pushed me too far. But that didn't matter. What mattered was that I had taken control of my life again. I wasn't going to let her own me anymore. And with that realization came a sense of freedom I hadn't known in years. "I'm leaving," I said firmly, turning away from her. "I'm not going to keep living in your shadow." I walked away from her, each step lighter than the last, the weight of years of manipulation falling off my shoulders with every movement. I didn't need to look back. I didn't need to see if Camille was still standing there. I knew I had won. I had finally broken free. Days passed, and slowly, the fog that had clouded my mind for so long began to lift. It wasn't easy. There were moments of doubt, moments when I questioned whether I had truly escaped her grip. But each time I looked in the mirror, I saw the truth. I was my own person again. I had my life back. I was no longer trapped by her obsession, her control. I moved to a new place, far away from the shadows of my past, and started rebuilding my life. The road was long, but for the first time in a long time, I felt hopeful. I was living for myself again. And one evening, as I stood outside and looked at the stars above, I realized something else. I had learned to trust myself again. I had faced the darkness, the fear, the manipulation, and come out stronger on the other side. The past was just that, the past, and I was ready to move forward. As I smiled, I knew something deep in my heart. There was nothing left to fear. The story of Camille, the woman who had tried to control me, was finally over. And my story, the one I had almost lost, was just beginning. And for the first time in years, I was excited to see where it would take me.